right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, guys, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. We'll be joined by Chris Mueller in a matter of moments over to 93.7 The Fan Cam. It was a big night for Chris Mueller and everyone over at 93.7 The Fan, their annual karaoke night. I'm sure it was a blast. I know Mary Hours was there. I'm sure she's such a terrific singer. I'm sure if Pomp was there, he stole the show too. But what about you? Sing me something, Chris.
Richie, unfortunately, after another stirring rendition of Wang Chung's Everybody Have Fun Tonight to close the show with Andrew and Donnie Football, unbeknownst to me, a flippant remark that I had made earlier in the night about Limp Bizkit's classic from 1999, Nookie, was taken seriously, and then I was requested to sing said song up on the stage. So, as you can hear, I am not at my vocal best tonight because, hey, even when the people surprise me with a request, I do my best to honor it to the best of my ability. Therefore, I have half screamed out my vocal cords because of a surprise extra performance. However, it was a great night there. Thank you to Mike's Beer Bar, and we were all doing this for Light of Life Rescue Mission, so for a very good cause, and it was, as usual, a very fun night. I'll tell you who stole the show, though. And if people are listening on 93.7 The Fan or watching on TV, hopefully they understand this person is a sort of a legendary figure. Nicholas Harry Callis, producer of the Fan Morning Show. He did Run, Run, Rudolph, or Run, Rudolph, Run. I'm sorry, yeah. Chuck Berry, I believe it is. He stole the show. You're going to hear about that performance like Prince at the Super Bowl from several years back, Richie. It's going to be one of those things that goes down in the annals of history as one of the great live performances of our generation.
You know, I'm sure it's on Twitter, so I would look it up. I think I saw it on, someone posted the video, and it was pretty good, pretty funny. I'm sure it was a great night. You know, I don't really partake in the karaoke. I'm not a good singer. I like to listen to it. But I can tell you that one time, the last time I think I went to a karaoke event, bar, whatever, it was at Bar Louie a few years ago. Someone went up there and sang the song Informer by Snow. I don't know how they did it. I actually think it was Snow because it was right on. That has to be the hardest song to sing. So I challenge you next year to sing Informer by Snow.
Okay, so if I had known that they were going to call my bluff on a random song, I would have said Give It Away by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, because one of my parlor tricks is I know the lyrics to that song all the way through without looking, so there's no double checking. I just do it in perfect time. And it's basically a rap funk song, so you can get away with doing that if you can't sing, because I can't sing. Two other karaoke thoughts, though. One, it's only really funny, I think, or it's really good if somebody's really bad at it or really good at it. And I have, in the same night at a bar many, many years ago, heard somebody do spoken word for a song that was most definitely not supposed to be spoken word. And then a guy go up there, Richie, and I kid you not, do She Talks to Angels by the Black Crowes as good as if Chris Robinson, their singer, was in the room performing the song. And then the last one is this. Last karaoke story is this. I don't know if you're aware of this, like, it's not even an urban legend. I think people have it on video. Eddie Vedder, you know who he is, right?
Yeah.
Lead singer of Pearl Jam, huge Chicago Cubs fan, goes up on stage at a Chicago bar, like in Wrigleyville, I think after a nighttime Cubs game, announces that he's going to do one of his own songs. Mind you, nobody in the bar knows that it's Eddie Vedder. Then begins to do his own song, and it takes the people in the bar, I believe, at least 2 minutes to realize the guy singing the song is actually the guy who really sings the song, which I find to be a very funny thing for a variety of reasons. Anyway, I'll segue out of this, Richie. I've got something for you. If the Steelers do not have George Pickens this weekend, you know what they're going to be singing against the Baltimore Ravens? The Blues.
I know. I agree with you, and I want to talk about that. Before we go to break here, it looks like arrows up for T.J. Watt. He might not be 100%, but they need him on defense. He's the most important player on defense. Deshaun Elliott was out at practice today, didn't do anything, so that doesn't look good. Tomorrow's going to be a big indication from those guys and Dante Jackson. But if they don't have Deshaun Elliott and Dante Jackson, I still don't feel good about it.
I think Elliott, actually, of those two, as well as Jackson has played when he's been healthy this year. I think he's had one bad game, but otherwise the numbers are pretty eye-popping on his part. Elliott feels like the bigger loss if he doesn't go, and it looks like he won't, just because tackling was such a significant issue for them against the Eagles. And Elliott is nothing if not an extremely sure tackler. He's been so good, I think, since he came over here in the offseason that I know he's got 1 year left on his deal, but we also know that this team, if they like somebody enough to keep him around longer term, with 1 year left is when you kind of get a little extension. I wouldn't mind extending Deshaun Elliott's deal as long as he's able to come back and not miss too much time. That guy has been really good, really sure as a tackler, has freed up Fitzpatrick, although they've had him playing back anyway. And against a team like the Ravens that wants to run it right at you, that wants to force you to make plays in space, not having him, I think, could be potentially disastrous.
Yeah, and I don't know what was worse, the defense or the offense in Philadelphia. They desperately need George Pickens, too. And you feel like they have close to zero chance if he's not out there either. All right, I want to touch on him coming up, but we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports. I'm Rich Walsh along with Chris Mueller, and this is our GMC Tweet of the Night. You can see Justin Schultz is calling it quits after 12 years in the NHL. He played parts of 5.5 seasons with the Penguins, helping them to 2 Stanley Cup champions. And I remember those Stanley Cup runs. He was a big part of it for that Penguins defense, Chris.
An absolutely pure offensive defenseman, but you know, he's one of those guys that you remember fondly, even if you don't think of them. They don't immediately come to mind from a championship team. But the kind of guy who had kind of a very specific role, and it was to create offense from the point, from the defense position, and I thought he did that very well. He doesn't maybe go down in the lore of the Penguins like Trevor Daley did, stepping up in that 2017 run with no Chris Letang, but Schultz, a very useful player. It's weird that we bring up the Penguins here, Richie. I know you want to talk George Pickens, but suddenly this team has demanded that we pay attention to it again by going 7-2-1 in their last 10 games and looking actually, you know, I saw somebody write this, and I think it was a very good take. They look the last 10 games like a team that actually had fired its coach 10 games ago. You know how you always see hockey teams get those bumps and suddenly look like a completely different group? The Penguins look like a team that either made a blockbuster trade and or fired its coach without actually having done either of those two things, and suddenly they are kind of back in the picture as a relevant entity in the Eastern Conference right now. Color me surprised, because I thought they were dead, toe-tagged, 6 feet under, and buried about a month ago. Yeah, me too. In those 10 games, Sidney Crosby doesn't have a goal either, so 8 points in 10 games right now. Do you feel like they look like a contender? They're only 1 point out of a wild card right now, you know, but I don't know if I have that feeling yet. They need to shore up the goaltending situation, for me, at least. Yeah, I'll just make this quick. I mean, I think that they're as good as their goaltending is going to be because they've been pretty good at creating offensive chances all year. They're pretty bad at stopping chances when they're on defense in their own zone. And if their goaltending is good, then they're going to be a better than break-even team. But if their goaltending is bad and they have a little bit of bad puck luck when it comes to finishing, when they have good scoring chances, then they're going to go on prolonged cold streaks. So as good as it is to see them playing much better hockey, I don't think I'm seeing maybe the underlying signs that suggest that this is going to be a team that does this for the long haul. If they do, it'd be one of the more surprising in-season turnarounds I've ever seen a Pittsburgh team make. Yeah, without a coaching change. All right, let's go out to Tim in McKeesport. How you doing, Tim?
Thanks, Chris and Richie, for taking my call. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Yeah, you too.
Same.
Wanted to ask you a quick question. I agree with you guys 100% on not having Pickens in there. It would make a big difference in creating offense for us. But is the Steelers so opposed, at least for using their quarterback with Wilson, to pass to Darnell Washington? I mean, the guy's a big target. I mean, he's so huge over most of the cornerbacks and free safeties and the corners that I don't see why they would be opposed to using him on a lot of the plays to make at least 5-10-yard plays, even 15 to just get outside. I'll hang up a little.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim. I mean, not a bad idea. I think they need to use him more, also Pat Freiermuth more. And why aren't they throwing to Mike Williams? I just don't understand that. He's a similar player to George Pickens, where maybe just throw it up to him and he can win those contested catches battles.
I mean, it's clearly something with Williams where there's a lack of trust, or they think he is pretty much a one-trick guy at this point. As far as Washington goes, there isn't, he's a huge target, which is obviously good. There's not a ton of what I would call fluidity of movement from him. And so what I think that limits him to at times is, hey, we're going to run a little play action bootleg and run a misdirection where you start blocking one way and then you free release. You know, if you get Darnell Washington the ball moving in space and he's got 2 or 3 steps before anyone's even near him to get some momentum going, well, then you've got something. But, you know, he is, and I say this not meant to be derisively at all, or it's not meant to be that way. He lumbers a little bit out there, Richie, and so I think that's why that kind of limits his utility to them in the passing game, because they've got to scheme him up in certain ways to get him the ball in any kind of open space. You know what I'll tell you they could probably stand to do in this game that would help them compared to what they were in Philly, especially if they don't have Pickens? Not be so unbelievably predictable when it comes to what formation they're running, or specifically Wilson's status as being under center or not, and then what kind of play they run. They were under center in the shotgun, 25 times out of 41 offensive plays, Richie, in that game against Philly. Mm-hmm. Out of those 25 shotgun snaps, how many times do you think they threw passes? What number of those plays? Just take a wild guess.
20.
23. 92% of the time they passed out of the shotgun. 81% of the time they ran the ball, when they were under center. You don't have your best offensive skill player. You have to be less predictable than that. And that, for me, falls directly on Arthur Smith. You cannot let a defense, and in this case, Baltimore's defense has been playing better and better, especially against the pass. You cannot let them have that kind of tendency sort of tell if you're going to move the ball consistently.
Especially on first down, and you heard Arthur Smith say today, they're like an old pickup truck. Let's go out to Jim in Green Tree. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, Rick, how you doing? Merry
Good,
Christmas,
thanks for calling.
Chris. Merry Christmas.
You too.
Same to you.
Hey, Chris, and Chris, I think the Steelers are going to go down this week because they don't have any good. The one receiver they got from Wisconsin, he's good, but I don't know, Georgia or whatever, the one they call Moose.
No. Well, I don't know who he was talking about. They don't have anyone from Wisconsin. Their best receiver is George Pickens, who's from Georgia.
Is he talking about Darryl the Moose Johnston from the Dallas Cowboys of the mid-'90s? Is Jay Novacek walking through that door, Richie?
I don't know where he was going, but, I mean, the Steelers could really use him right now. You know, one guy that I think can make some big plays here is Calvin Austin in this game. So I still think it's going to be a low-scoring type game. That's the kind of feeling I have. I don't have a good feeling about the Steelers, especially after George Pickens doesn't play, potentially Sean Elliott and the guys that we had mentioned. But I still think it's going to be one of those one-possession, field-goal type games.
I do think there is something to be concerned about insofar as Lamar Jackson has never seen them twice in 1 year. And so if the big question or the big concern is, are we ever going to see sort of the fully operational version of Lamar Jackson, you would think it would be in a season where he actually gets the Steelers twice, he gets to make adjustments from the first time, and he perhaps fixes some of the issues that plagued him the first time around. I think they have a much better game plan for him than most teams do. I think they have kind of an innate, theory as to how to stop him that works well, and I do think it's in his head a little bit, but you don't generally want to give a player as talented, as great as he generally is, as he is against pretty much everybody else, 2 bites at the apple in such a short period of time. And so I do think we might be primed for the first really good Lamar Jackson game against the Steelers. But then again, I could look like a complete idiot on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening when they've somehow stifled him again.
Yeah, multiple players on that defense said he was the best quarterback in the world. So let's go out to Jim in Peters. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, I agree with most everything you say. I call it one and done again. Really, I do. And I'll tell you the reason why. I agree they're not going to be Baltimore because without Elliott in there and predictability. I was saying the same thing as myself when Chris was talking. They're not going to be Kansas City at home. Then they're a wild card. Now, who they get as a wild card? They're going to get Buffalo or Kansas City away. They lose. One and done.
Yeah, that would be one and done. I mean, even if they lose this game, they would still be in first place and still kind of control their path to the playoffs. They would just have to win the last 2 games. That Kansas City game is obviously going to be tough. They're not good on short weeks, and it's Kansas City. But I feel like that's kind of a close game, and I think Kansas City's beatable. And who knows what the Bengals are playing for. They're still kind of in this. somehow. But here, what I think, Chris, and I don't know if you agree with me, they had a wake-up call against Cleveland. They rebounded and won the following week. Maybe the Philly game was a big wake-up call for this team.
I don't know if it was a wake-up call so much as it was a pretty decisive beating by a team that, by my reckoning, is clearly a step or two or a notch or two above them. I do think it is somewhat alarming that they were physically manhandled to such a degree. And usually when they're down 4 points after being outplayed for the first 30 minutes, you feel like, all right, they're going to stick around and find a way to win this game, and everyone's going to scratch their heads. Mike Tomlin's got his usual voodoo in effect. And the opposite happened. I thought the Eagles just said, no, we're going to actually manhandle you for the last 30 minutes of this football game. When was the last time you saw the Steelers give up a 10.5-minute, 21-play drive to just ice a football game completely? That was eye-opening levels of dominance from the Eagles in the fourth quarter of that football game.
Yeah, I can't remember a time that happened, but I think where it turned for me, I mean, there's two places, and I think we can all agree on this, that there should have been offsetting penalties, and that would have been potentially a different outcome, and then obviously Najee Harris's fumble. So those are the two plays I think that really turned things around, but no doubt about it, the Steelers were kind of out of the game. They were down 14. I never felt like they were in that game, for sure, at least sitting in the seats in Philadelphia. Got to take a break, Chris. Back in a couple minutes. All right, now it's time to turn things over to Ken Rice to find out what's coming up on KDKA News at 11. Ken?
Hey, Rich, tonight the closure of a Mercer County Health Center puts hundreds of jobs in jeopardy, plus trash troubles in Uniontown. And Ray Petlin is tracking colder weather for the rest of the week, all coming up right here at 11, Rich.
All right, thanks a lot, Ken. Chris, we don't have a lot of time here, less than a minute, but I do want to get your prediction, not for the Steelers game, we'll get that tomorrow, but I want to get your prediction for Pitt volleyball. #1 in the country, taking on Louisville in Louisville. If they win, you could potentially see a Pitt-Penn State matchup for a championship.
I mean, ridiculously hostile environment for the #1 overall seed to have to go into, playing their arch rival. But I have faith in this team. You know, I think usually you need to have one super close match or game to win a big NCAA tournament like this. Like we always say that about March Madness. I think they got that out of the way with Oregon. I think they're going to beat Louisville. And then I got a feeling we're going to get Pitt, Nebraska, which would be a true battle of the Titans that we all deserve in the national title match.
Yeah, you know what? I'm excited. I like what's going on. I like the optimism. I like what's going on over at Pitt volleyball. Good luck to them. Good luck to you guys out there. Hopefully we see you over on KDKA News coming up in just a couple minutes.